Would you call community God's tool that he uses, or how would you describe the relationship between God and community, and how do those work together?
Well, first of all, God is community because he's 3 in 1, right? It's part of the Trinity. It's built into who God is.
Okay.
So I see it's much deeper than community being a tool that God uses to bring us out. Mm-hmm. I see who we are and how we interact with this whole thing, much like an arrow. Mm-hmm. So we've got God, mm-hmm. and then the arrow is us, mm-hmm. and then the head of the arrow is the people around us. Mm. And the same model works for church. God, the church, and then the people who don't know Jesus. Mm-hmm. And so we are funnels for God to move through us to touch the world. Mm-hmm. And so as we walk, as we smile at people in the elevator, we bring the light of Jesus with us. Mm-hmm. We don't have to present Jesus. Mm-hmm. We just live in that community with Jesus. Mm-hmm. But the problem when you're in deep depression is that there's no outflow. And so letting people come around you, letting people inside your space, even though it takes a little while sometimes, you have to do it in small increments, it allows that flow to start moving again, and God to move through us to touch the world. So when I was in the postpartum with my son, I had this online community of people who came around me, and I started hearing value for my voice, because I started learning to speak what I was seeing in them. I learned to speak as well as to receive. And there's a thing with the flow that if we need community around us for us to be able to fully be the people that God created us to be.
Yeah. I hear flow. When I hear flow, I hear this kind of participation with God. Is that what you're saying? It's kind of learning how to participate and to let him. I want people to understand how this differs from almost like generating it out of ourselves. It sounds like it's more of a participation with God.
Imagine that I'm pouring water into a cup.
Okay.
And then I move the cup over here.
Okay.
Okay. It's about getting under the downspout.
Okay.
And letting God work through us.
Okay.
This whole thing is not something we can generate.
Okay.
And if we're generating it, first of all, it's taking energy from us that doesn't work very well. 2, we're not getting refilled. So we need to be in such a place that it just flows naturally through us, not something that a lot of times when I was raised in church, my picture of Christianity was grab a photo of God and put it in front of your face, and that's how you represent Jesus to the world. and so there was this perfectionism that I couldn't hold a picture of God in front of my face because I have ugly moments. And then I'd feel really guilty and hold the picture higher so that people would see not me, but God made me as a human being with my personality, my failings, he knows who I am, yet he put me on earth because what he wants to flow through me to touch the world, the same way he wants to flow through you to touch the world. We have different giftings, we have different failings, but we're here because what we bring to the table is needed.
I want to have Kim back to talk more about that. So just put a pin in that thought. I would love to have Kim come back and teach us more, because I just feel like that's really needed. I feel like that's a needed message for now. One more question I have before we wrap, actually 2, but one question I have is, what would you say some like 2 or 3 tips for success of maybe someone isn't in community, they really like what you're hearing, they want that for themselves, but they But like you said something earlier about being weird. What are some tips to avoid that? How can you have genuine community that would be meaningful, that would be helpful? And maybe you failed in the past to create that the way that you dream to.
I think one of the tips is to not think it needs to be something really formal.
Mm-hmm.
That it's the same as sitting down to coffee with people. It's not the same as creating some fakey, we have to get together for a specific, we get together because we want to get to know each other. We want to spend time together. But the second tip is that relationship takes time. So you have to create the ability to get to know one another over time instead of expecting everything to go super deep, super fast. Let that be a natural progression. And maybe that's half the weirdness, is that we walk into church and think that we all need to spill our guts, or we all need to either put on the face or be way more authentic than is comfortable. And the truth of the matter is that relationships take time.
Yeah.
We just have to move inside each other's space until we start to value the voices of those around us.
Any other tips for success?
Yes, put it on the calendar.
Yeah.
If you don't plan, it won't happen. Yeah. You can say this is a good idea. You can think this is a good idea. You can talk about doing it, but until it's on the calendar, it won't happen.
Okay. And then how about, what are some things to avoid? You've talked a little bit about that. But what are some other things
I have
you would
rules
say?
in my, first of all, I'd also suggest a couple of platforms. Google Hangouts is free, and so you can do that.
Okay.
Different people interact differently. So there are a lot of different ways that you could do it, but find a way that makes sense in the way the people you know interact online.
Okay.
And the tips to avoid is, I had a thought and it went away.
Okay. Well, if it comes back, I'm going to ask you one final question before we wrap. What is saving your life right now? What is the thing that you're finding life from? The way that God is moving in your heart that's really meaningful? Is it worship? Is it prayer? What's the one thing that you're getting a lot of joy from in this season that you're in?
I have two things. One, I really love creating educational environments.
Okay.
And so I'm learning to do that better.
Okay.
And then I have a group I meet with on Sunday nights, comprised of people from my original mastermind group.
Okay.
That we go we're doing a study together.
Okay.
But it's challenging and it's wonderful to walk with people over time.
So how can people connect with you? You're on social?
I am.
Okay.
I'm on Facebook.
Okay, so people can go. We'll have Kim's name. We'll have some notes and some different quotes in the notes so that you can kind of track with what we've been talking about. Kim, I want to thank you so much for being here, for sharing your story, for sharing your journey. And thanks so much for joining us. It's always a blessing and a pleasure to be with you. Have a great day.